This is the BeMor Media Podcast with Benjamin Gardner and Morgan Spencer, which documents us creating a business from scratch and life in a business environment. We discuss our own initiatives, both business and personal, as we grow through new opportunities and challenges.
Let's see, this week we took a good interest in Joe Rogan's podcast from the one that he had with Naval, Ravikant. I sent that over to you to give it a listen, and with some general thoughts. I know we got some notes to look over.
Yeah, definitely. And there was a lot of content. It seemed like kind of every 2 minutes they were kind of switching topics a little bit, and each one kind of had like a gem of good content. Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, they're dropping bombs. A gem is definitely, there was a gem in each one of those things that, like, just phrases that kind of like stuck with you. It's one of those things that you really it draws you closely. You almost feel like you're getting to know them because, like, they're hitting so much home for you.
Right.
Yeah, I have some notes here if you want me to jump off. You can
definitely
tag along. I think I sent them to you. Did you go?
Yes.
All right, cool. I want to try and make this as relatable to us as possible. So every time you hit a note, just give your sense to it as well, I would say.
Perfect.
One of the first notes that I took was they reference cross training. Joe's definitely referenced cross training with someone else before. I forget, but Naval talks about multiple disciplines, and he opens it up with he considers himself more of a bear. A bear isn't exactly exciting. A unicycle isn't exactly exciting, but a bear on a unicycle is very exciting. So it's something that grabs your attention. I took it as it's a cross-training format of multiple disciplines. And in relation to me, I said this last week, I say it again, is that I'm a plumber by trade, an engineer by education, and an entrepreneur at heart. I've done anything I can just to make a living basically my whole life, at least in the realms of trade work. Gone to school, gotten an education. So I've been around and just tried. In college, I even failed a couple classes just to consume most of my time doing research in something that made me interested, that was interesting to me, as opposed to, doing the classwork. I actually, took a step back and said, okay, this is a class I'm not going to pass. So I realizing I wasn't going to pass it, I went full into research on certain projects, so I was at least utilizing that time to learn something. So I try to make myself come together in multiple disciplines, as well as the university we went to was try to display and teach the same format. I think that they did a good job of it. It's one of those things that you kind of hate it when you're going through it, but looking back, it was definitely, they did a good job of bringing together design, which was called Deck Design Engineering and Commerce.
Yeah, and like you said, it was kind of at the time, because actually for us it was the first class. We were the first class that went through that program, so there's still a lot of growing pains. And I know that, kind of during the process, and we had 4 classes. We had 1 class each year, I think. That was kind of involved in that core curriculum, and I know that kind of for us, some of them were just like, ooh, this is a little much. But I kind of think of, like, if we were to go back, I would probably get so much more value from that now. Like, that first deck class was just, it was terrible. I remember being in it. It was just awful. But, like, if we went back and looked at those concepts, that's, like, exactly what we need to utilize now.
Right.
So yeah, it was definitely an interesting experience going through that. But you're right. Like, our college was definitely good for that. And like you talked about kind of your classes and how you went through school. I remember you were in, what was it called? Like, our entrepreneurship center for like hours. Like, that's where, if you weren't at home or in class, I knew you were probably over there.
Yeah, I got that. That's the real reason why I stayed in college, really, was because, I foolishly took the stance that I'm not a quitter, so I wasn't going to drop out of college. And then behind that, they started an entrepreneurship center with Zoe, and I got lucky and caught her in her first month that they opened up the entrepreneurship center inside the deck building. And when she was still had a lot of free time, I was utilizing, my time and her time and to spend as much time as I possibly could with her. I mean, to build a relationship, to get an understanding of how the entrepreneurship world kind of works. And I was always in there just talking about an idea. So I was always getting out an idea and then seeking her advice and then figuring out how the legality of entrepreneurship works and NDAs and, whether you should do NDAs or not, and if the legal process going through it, how to form entities for businesses, basically everything that I could. So I learned a lot going through the process of, I consider her one of my first mentors in entrepreneurship because she was my first introduction to that actually being a thing. So I grew up, and my grandfather was a very big businessman, but I never knew that exactly it had a title per se, or it was something you could actually pursue.
Right. And so, it's funny because you were talking about how you kind of did all that, but you were, I remember freshman year, I want to say it was even just after the first semester, you're like, yeah, I don't really want to do engineering. And you were like, I don't know. I don't know what I want to do. And I know you were considering about just dropping out or whatever, but like you said, and you were like, I'm not a quitter. And then you stuck it out for another, what was it? You did it for 4.5 years? Stuck around for an extra semester?
Yeah, I had to finish an extra semester I did an extra minor. I got a major and a minor.
Right.
A major with a concentration in a minor. Yeah.
So just like that kind of, just looking at the process as a whole, seeing you go from engineering, not really what I want to do your very first year. And then the deck center didn't open until our junior year. So there was that kind of time period where you didn't really have anything. You were just kind of sticking it out. But then
I think it was our sophomore year, second semester.
Was it? I don't know, second semester, sophomore year. Okay. So then
but still, that's a year and a half.
Right. You had a year and a half where you're like, I'm just going to be here to finish, which is, it's respectable that you're going to finish what you started. But I'm sure it was kind of nice to have that entrepreneurship center kind of open up when you were like, oh, I'm just kind of here. Oh, well, I'm glad I stuck it out because here's this great thing.
Yeah, that's the fortunate part of the situation was that happened. Had I left, I think that ultimately I would have come down to starting my own business eventually, because then I would have been in a position where I had to take responsibility for my own life since I wasn't going to college. I would have to find my own way. So I guess it kind of came down to either find your own way, or I felt like going through college society would find my way for me. And that's just, ultimately that's not true. And basically the reason why I went to college being an engineer is essentially, this comes back to what Gary Vee talks about. I'm glad we're taking this, is that he talks a lot about you can't pressure your kids going into school. I went to school for my father. I went to engineering school for my father. That's what my whole life growing up doing plumbing with him since I was 12. He's at the top of his hierarchy in his career field, he's a plumber, is the engineer. So my father always told me, you want to be the engineer, you want to be the engineer, you want to be the engineer. And I took it, and I guess now saying that, I've never looked at it from a macro level, and I don't think he ever thought about it this way either, but thinking about it from a broader perspective is that, you want to be the engineer, you want to be the guy on top, basically. So you don't want to be the guy doing the grunt work, is I think what he really at heart felt that he, that's what he wanted from me, but he only knew it from a sense that in order to be at the top of the food chain in his world was being an engineer. And now learning across disciplines that, being an entrepreneur, you can be at the top as whatever position you take, business owner, just CEO or whatever it may be. That's the top of the hierarchy in my mind. And
that's
I went to, go ahead.
That's a very I was going to say that when you were talking about how your dad wanted you to be, the engineer because that's top, it's kind of like him unknowingly being like kind of pushing you into an entrepreneurial field. You just didn't know it. Like, he put you in an entrepreneurial mindset. Hey, you want to be at the top. You want to run things, blah, blah, blah. Like, he was doing it in the sense of, like, in his small scope of, in this industry, you want to be at the top, which is the engineer. But in reality, he's kind of unknowingly setting you up with that mindset of, hey, you want to be at the top. You want to run the company, that kind of thing. So it's kind of interesting because I think that it seems he might have put an entrepreneurial mindset into your head unknowingly for both of you.
Yeah, I've never thought of it in that sense until literally just now having this conversation. And this is why expressing things is very important. So this has been, utilizing this time to express some things that I wouldn't say that I agree with what happened with the past. There's definitely teachable lessons in there that you have to take. You can't take them for granted. And by sitting down, and this is talked a lot about in Naval and Joe's podcast, is by taking the time to think about it, to, listen to yourself, your inner thoughts, or even expressing your feelings towards, outwardly, is definitely give you the opportunity to better understand why you made choices the way you did, and really the underlying why question behind it.
Yeah, I think Naval says that kind of towards the end. I think Joe asks him something like, do you do this often? He's like, I love coming on shows and talking with people about this, because it's not until I actually start talking about it, and rather than just thinking about what I think is right in my head the whole time, but when I actually start talking about it, I can start making connections and, gaining these realizations. So that's definitely kind of a similar thing that we're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that's it's definitely a mindset that I think that was kind of positioned in my brain. And then I would say that's probably why I gravitated towards the Entrepreneurship Center, and that being my choice for lifestyle for the rest of my life.
Right. But not limiting yourself to being an engineer.
Yeah, yeah.
And they kind of talked about that on the podcast too, in the this podcast. And one of the things that I really pulled out that I really liked is kind of towards the beginning, where he was saying, people like to stay in one career, but we're not really made to do that. Or people like to stay in one, area, but we're not really made to do that. And he kind of gives the metaphor of, we're climbing up this mountain our whole life, and then we realize we want to do something different, but we're already 2/3 of the way up, and we don't want to go back down and start a new path.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's kind of where people get stuck.
Yeah, take me to going to college, for example. Like, this all ties in. This is perfect. He also says that greats have the ability to start over in order to recreate. At that point in time, I needed to recreate myself. And looking back, I'm glad I didn't drop out of college, because the ability for me to get introduced to Zoe in the Entrepreneurship Center really grew me exponentially. That reduced time frames for me, and it gave me the opportunity to realize that was right then and there was me beginning to recreate myself, realizing that I'm not meant to be an engineer, but while I'm here, I'm going to take the opportunity of recreating myself, recreating the direction that I'm going to take my life, of being down the path of entrepreneurship. And
right. And
they
you wouldn't be here today without all those kind of little microcosms that led to this. You would not be the same you today without all of that.
Yeah, yeah. I used to tell people this is, take a step back from your life and you see a lot of dots. Like, when you're young or you're looking at towards the future, you're seeing a lot of dots. And those dots are these points in life where you would like to get. And eventually, when you start looking at the past, you could start seeing how those dots started to connect, and you're drawing the line to connect the dots to eventually form a picture. And in going in the present moment, you're stuck on a dot, and you're looking to get to the next one. And then truly, it's just a matter of talent, effort, or, just really, I'll just say it's a matter of effort, and it's a matter of time. And it's just, you're just putting in the hard work over a period of time to get there. And it's, eventually you'll look back and you'll be able to see the full picture. And I truly do feel that it's going to be something that'll be a beautiful one. And maybe if it's not, start getting down the path that's beginning to recreate that picture that you're drawn to be a beautiful one, and something that you can look back and really be, truly be amazed by or impressed by where you've come from and where you are and where you are going.
Yeah, and I think that's definitely kind of where we're both at in the mindset, and I think it's great to have that both personally and in a business sense. If you can apply that, in a business sense, it kind of gets you to that point that you're like, you know what? Every decision I made, good or bad, brought me to where I am today. I need to learn from the bad ones and the good ones and kind of make my business decisions based on that moving forward.
Yeah, they used to teach us in our deck program, was a big thing was have that beginner's mindset and to be foolish and to fail early. And they had like a catchphrase like fail early, fail often.
Yep.
I think maybe failing often it almost has a negative connotation, but you just if indeed that is what's happening, you just have to take the lessons out of it. And that's truly what life is about. Is it's a direction. It's failing is a moment to redirect. And if you're not redirecting it, you're moving backwards. So you got to keep moving forward by redirecting that failure. So it's something that pushes you and really keeps you in between the lines. So it's kind of like you're going bowling and you're throwing a bowl. You got the bumpers up and you're hitting off the sides to try and redirect your path, and that's essentially what it becomes till you get to the end. And it's not an easy road per se. I think I think that's just, in general, that's just life. That's it.
Oh, 100%. It's never going to be easy. I mean, I look at my life and I go, you know what? I had it pretty easy. You know what I mean? Like, I look back and I'm like, I truly have never really, not had something that I didn't need. And most of the time not something I didn't want. And that's kind of where I take my perspective when if I'm like feeling bad about myself or feeling bad at all, I'm like, you know what? I have a pretty great life. I haven't had too many hardships. And so that's kind of where you can take that mindset, that you set up and just reassess it from kind of that outward point of view, coming kind of that out of body, looking at yourself and saying, you know what? It could be worse.
Yeah. I don't know who said this or if I said it, but it's everything that you're going through is preparing you for everything that you want. So if you're putting yourself in the situation to feel these stressors, and that's one of the things that you have to embrace, that this is an opportunity to grow in this. Like, take the house that I'm building, for example, is I brought this on myself. Like all the work that has to be done, everything, all the money that has to be expended, I brought this on myself. I made the choice to do this, and so therefore I'm going through with the consequences of my decision to purchase a house that needed to be fully renovated. And so it's you're bringing it on. I brought this on. I wanted it in order to grow and better myself and better the opportunity for me to have a family, start a family, and hopefully, develop farther past that. But it's the end result really that I'm doing it for. I'm just looking at it from the perspective from, taking a step back and saying, this is where I'm at, this is where I'm going. And I think it starts in gratitude. You have to be, this is definitely something I want to touch on. I'll touch on it later in the notes, is that this is something that everything has to start from gratitude. You have to get to a point of realization that I'm blessed. I'm thankful for everything that I've had. And this is why I think that every morning, it should be, I don't do this, but this is what people say, is to start every morning with, just stating things that you're grateful for. And it really starts your day off on the right foot, because you could sit through life and internalize all these things and frustrations, but in reality, there's a positive side to it too. I will just bring it up now. It doesn't matter. it's one of the, I've had to train myself. I would say that I was definitely more of a pessimist, than I was an optimist growing up. And
for sure.
that was
Me too.
a product, I would say a product of my environment. And it's almost as if like you want to play victim. You're pessimistic in the sense that you want to play victim because you want the attention from others. And maybe it's a childish thing that you just outgrow. There's definitely adults still stuck in it too, but
Yeah.
I think it's a progression of life that you get to a point where you realize that, or, some people don't even realize this. Someone helped me realize this because in the restaurant that I work, one of the foreigners, this is years ago, maybe 4 years, not so many, 4 years, 5, 6 years ago. I guess I was still in college, so it was 6 or 7 years ago. He said, why are you always so mean or negative or whatever? And right then and there, it just kind of clicked. And I was like, wow, like I have the ability to, the world is what I make it. I can be negative to the world. It's going to give it right back. And you can either choose to see the world optimistically or pessimistically. I could look at my house and I'm staring at sheetrock that's on the ground. That's got to be moved to the dumpster. And look at all the work I got to put into it. Or I could say, thank God I have a house.
Right.
Thank you that I have the opportunity to purchase a house, the finances to purchase a house. The skill set, the knowledge to renovate a house and save myself money. You can always look on the brighter side of things.
Yeah, and I mean, and kind of going to what I think Naval brought up in the podcast is, he talks about like picking one desire to stress over, your one big thing that you want, and stress over that. That's what you can stress over. But every other thing in life, just like let the stress go. And that he said that's how you can be calm and peaceful and relaxed, and that's how you can work towards that.
Yeah, and I'm gonna go back to the notes from this is later on in their podcast and talk about peace and happiness and how this is it's a mindset, and this is something that Naval said is pretty much a direct quote. Peace is happiness at rest, and happiness is peace in motion. You can convert peace to happiness anytime you want, but peace is what you want most of the time. If you're a peaceful person, anything you do will be a happy activity. And it truly starts in the mind. And you have to start from there. And getting there is probably the difficult part. But this is something that I've always saw myself as having a lot of money. So I wanted to make sure that I got in the right mindset before I got the money so that when I had the money, I utilized it in a wise way. And it goes for the same thing for a lot of things in my life. I've oriented it into say that if you want money, you better be a good steward of that money. So I took the responsibility of saying that I would like to be a person who has money to utilize it in a way that I can build wealth for myself and other people. So you better learn how to be wise. You better learn how to have good discernment. You better learn to lean on other people who have greater, build a network of people who have better knowledge and skill set ahead of you so you can reduce the time frame. So it's everything in my life has shaped my life to getting to that point. So every decision that I make is something to realign it and redirect it towards getting towards that path. And I think that I'm trying to utilize that as something to live by example for. And he also says that live the life you want other people to live. And I think that if I can, we started off the podcast last week saying that to start providing and creating content that's giving people and storing good ethics, values, morals, and changing people's mindsets and really just shaping society, at least anyone who listens, shaping the community that we create in a sense that's going to make an impact and better fulfill themselves, which will then better fulfill the world. And it really starts with changing yourself. It's easier, he says this too, it's easier to change yourself than to change the world. And the best way to change the world is to change yourself. Naval said the first part, Joe said the second part, and it's so true. And that's what I want to utilize our time as doing, is providing an example of how we've helped shape ourselves in order so that people can change themselves to help us change the world.
Right, because we can spout all day long, hey, be a better person, hey, do this, do that. Everyone knows that. Everyone has been told to be a better person and, you know, to do the right thing and things like that their whole life and all that kind of stuff. And if we just said that, we'd just be another podcast that, you know, in a sea of podcasts that does that. But
right.
if we are putting out content that tells about our stories and our experiences, that a story always hits better than someone telling you to do something. You know, a relatable story is always going to win.
Right, and this is where we're taking Gary Vaynerchuk's advice to heart and really saying that here we put in the time to document the process of us going through it from the beginning. And we could have started earlier than this when things weren't looking at, not the thing. There's more reason for me to be happy now than there was a year or 2 years ago. So we could have started earlier when this wasn't as a bright looking, you know, future. It's not like we have any, like, I'm still starting, it's like my bank account, every time I pay a bill, I'm starting at zero. Like, it's like, I'm not saying that I'm in a financial position to be, you know, I'm better well off, but I'm definitely better well off than I was a year or 2 years ago. So we're still battling to get ahead. So I think it's a good time that we started to try and lead by example and say that it is possible and that you can do it. And we have a great advantage to be documenting the process from the start.
Yeah, and especially when both of us are in such a kind of chaotic, hectic time of our lives, but we're still doing it, you know? Like, I think it's interesting when this all came about, because we could have started this, you know, 2 years ago, because we've been talking about, you know, business things, and, you know, we've had our phone calls before. We've talked about doing this for a while, but we never really sat down and did that, especially when, you know, at that time we were probably less busy than we are now. You know, we didn't have as many responsibilities or, you know, a house or anything like that. And it's interesting to me, the timing for this, that when this really clicked for us is when we're both at our most busy, most hectic times in our lives.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm coming into the summertime in a seasonal restaurant business, and, you know, we're going to be busy. In the last year, you know, we could have started this in the winter. In the past year, we've gone from not being married, not owning a house, and now we're both married and own a house. So or not own. We're still. I don't consider owning when you have a mortgage. So
yeah, we don't own anything.
Either way, it's we've really set ourselves up to document it from the beginning. And you know, that to me, that couldn't have been. This couldn't have started at a better time.
Yeah. And I don't think we were in the right mindsets at all. Like, I think that if we started documenting this and recording this 2 years ago, it wouldn't have been great. Like, there wouldn't have been good tidbits of content. I mean, we always had good phone conversations where we, you know, it was always some enlightening things that we would talk about, but I don't think it would have been as deep and meaningful as it would right now.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I'm following the notes below of what we just talked about. He goes on to say about Confucius, every man has two lives, and the second starts when he realizes he has just one. And that kind of struck me in the sense that I was involved in a car accident where I flipped a car. I should have died. I was involved in a motorcycle accident where I was headed for two trees, and I hit a 3.5-inch reflector post that was like 3 foot high, and it flung me off to the side. I was heading into a double oak tree, and so I've escaped death on multiple senses where it made me reframe my life to the point to say that maybe my life does have a purpose. Like, I always thought that I was meant to die young and just live it up while I could, die young, and then I don't have to worry about it. And it seems like it was like an excuse for me to live a lifestyle that was always pushing the edge, or just a radical lifestyle. And this is when you put a goal in your life, it holds you, it instills a sense of accountability in you that makes you responsible for fulfilling certain duties or directing your life towards a certain way. So it's by realizing that that in reality I only do have one life, and that I can't keep pushing the boundaries, and that there's much more that I want to pursue in my life and accomplish and achieve. It's changing the way that I'm making decisions for the rest of my life.
Yeah, and I'm glad you called out that quote, because I was literally just about to say it too, because I think that was probably the most, like the part that hit me the most in that whole podcast, which is funny because it was like a Confucius kind of thing. It wasn't either of them really coming up with it, but just kind of, I guess, in the context of all the stuff they were talking about, and they kind of dropped that in there, that it just kind of, it really does make you take a step back and be like, huh, like that really makes sense. And obviously for me, I did not have the same personality type as you, so I wasn't doing any super dangerous things, but it's always eye-opening regardless of where you are in your life, to be like, to really take a step back and be like, this is my only life. What is my 1 or 2 or 3 top goals of what I want to accomplish in the future, or where I want to be with my family, or, things like that, to really take that into account and then realize, like, this is all I have. This is all I have. How can I make the best of it while I'm here? Yeah.
And I'm not trying to glorify any of the accidents that I've had, but it's one of those things that's like, it doesn't take something like that to make you realize that you only have one life to live. And it's funny that, like, this whole like YOLO thing, I'm glad that it's dead. But because it was utilized in society as like almost like just, I don't even know what to call it. It was basically mocking the fact that, you only have, in my opinion, you only have one. But the true purpose, there's a lot of truth there's a lot of meaning behind the truth of that statement. And in order to fulfill the meaning, you truly have to live.
Right.
And I'm glad that it's died in the sense that, people aren't using it as, like, people were abusing it to the sense of using it for a means to make foolish decisions.
Yeah.
And
it was like an excuse.
The intent of that acronym is to truly, I think, to actually add value to someone's life, and people were using it mean the ways to do the opposite. And it's one of those things that you just, when you come to every person has to find a realization and that point in their life where they see it as being an important part of their life. And I also want to bring up the fact that it's someone like Confucius. How do you come up with the real, how can you even construct a statement like that that's so powerful and impactful? And they talk a lot about silence and just being able to ask a lot of questions to yourself in silence. And I think that digging down and digging deep into who you are as a person, and even they even go as far as to ask the question, what's the meaning of life? And that's something that he said it's more about the question than it really is about the answer.
Yep.
And that by asking that question and giving yourself the silence to think that through gives you a platform to start living your life, or realizing that you only have one life, and then fulfilling that one life in a way that is going to be changing your life and then changing others. So I think by asking that question to yourself allows you to really think internally and then realize, what is it that I truly want? What do I truly desire? Who am I? Why am I here? What's my purpose? And that's what helps you to live that life that you want to pursue for fulfillment and out of passion.
Right. And, they bring that question up, and obviously it's brought up, it's been brought up since the dawn of time. Like everyone wants to know what the meaning of life is. But it's kind of funny how it's asked, right? Like, what is the meaning of life, I think should be rephrased to what is the meaning of your life. Because we can't just say, what is the meaning of life? Oh, everyone's life, this is the meaning. Like, it's different for different people. And I think it changes too. Like, the meaning of my life could be different now than it will be 10 years from now. Like and I guess there's never really a concrete answer either. Like, that's where kind of the desires and goals come into, like, that's how you push your meaning of life. But there's never going to be one definitive, this is the meaning of my life. It's made up of a bunch of things that mean a lot to you or that you desire in the moment. And it's constantly changing.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of that starts with the silence. I think a lot of that also starts with the ability to look optimistically on life also. So he said also that an unhappy person wants 10,000 things, a sick person wants just one.
Yep.
And it's when you're sick, you just want to be healthy. And so a lot of that, of the utmost importance is, you are like taking care of yourself. But in that thought right there is just that. Start asking what it is you want. What do you truly want? And you have to dig down to what's that one thing.
Right.
And I think my one thing was I want to be in a position where I can help people. That was where I always kind of took a stance in the direction of where I see my life. And so the position to help people doesn't have to come from a position of money, but I wanted the money to be in a greater position where I can help people. So you can always help people without being, financially. You can help people without financially. Like I hope that we are currently doing right now, we are helping people without finances, without money. And so by pursuing this has been, taking this step has given me the direction to fulfill something that I've tried to orient my life to. And it's by getting to that one thing as opposed to the unhappy thoughts that continue. Like, you go to a coffee shop, I was there, I had a cup of coffee, guilty, yesterday. And it was, do I get an iced latte or a regular hot latte? And I got an iced one. I was like, I don't even know if I like the iced one. So then it's like, that's an unhappy thought. So it becomes one of those things that you can allow that to get you down or in the moment, or something else that's stupid is I had a problem with the insurance company this week. I can allow that to get me down, and that's one of those things that it can haunt you and kill your ability to move on in life and think with a clear and conscious mind. He uses calm, cool, and collected, and that's the way where you're going to optimize and function on the highest level. You have to be calm, cool, and collected in order to hit that peak performance.
Yeah, and that's key. It's key to life. That's key to business. That's key to everything.
Yeah, and that kind of stems from getting. He says an unhappy person has 10,000 wants 10,000 things, and it's true. When you're unhappy, you constantly think of the negative side of something. Is that this should be different, that should be different, and you'll never be in a positive position or in a positive mind frame if you're thinking about what the opposite of it could be. You have to think about things on the optimistic side as opposed to the pessimistic side, and realize that this is really going to be the foundation that changes the rest of your life.
Yeah, and he kind of talks about that. Naval talks about how being like, they were kind of saying it in more of when they were talking about meditating, but like kind of going outside yourself. So he was having, thoughts about whatever, and he was trying to assess why he had those thoughts. So he was talking about preparing for the show, actually. And he said that, he was having all these negative thoughts of like, what's he going to say, blah, blah, blah. And then he kind of stopped a minute and kind of took a step back and then was assessing himself. So he started thinking about why did he have those thoughts, kind of like a, 2 levels up kind of thing. And then that's where he was like, here's why I'm having these thoughts, because of, how I was raised as a child. That's why I have these thoughts. And then after that, he said that he kind of didn't worry about it anymore, because he kind of took that out of body, I guess, kind of thing, where he says, this is what's going on here. This is why I'm having these thoughts. And, it doesn't make sense for me to stress about it.
Yeah. You just brought up 2 things that go along with it too. I'll first talk about what he said, and then we'll go on how I can find it relatable. This brings back I've called it C cubed for like my whole life, calm, cool, and collected. And
Yep.
for some reason I like that from a young age, and I've always called it C cubed, staying calm, cool, and collected. And I brought this up. I'll say he said it. To operate at peak performance, you have to learn to tame your mind. Let the little things go to avoid mental fog, and that goes along with stresses. He highlights the importance of low stress, and that to me is like internally you create stress. And for me, the big struggle for me with that, he actually said that he rehearsed for the interview with Joe Rogan.
Yep.
So he had those thoughts cluttering his mind, and he says that he thinks that started as a kid for the desire to sound smart. So he always rehearsed things. So I don't know why I've had it before, but this is something I've always done, and I continuously do it. I always took it as a positive thing. Now, hearing him saying it, I'm starting to question why it could be negative. So I'm glad that he stated. But I've tried to live through experiences in my mind before they've ever happened. And sometimes I think it's something that you can do to prepare yourself for things in the positive side, but also on you have to find the balance, because I think that in a negative sense, it could be just way too much. Like, if I've had a conflict with someone, I've lived out the conversation of that conflict 10 different ways. And in reality, that's avoiding me just having the conversation. So it's more important to have the conversation than to see it through 10 times in your mind.
Yeah, and that's also like the preemptive, right? Like I am also very good at, after a conversation, I just think about, man, I should have said this, man, I should have said that. So it's kind of both sides of the coin there, and it's really just wasting your time. Like, there's so much better things you could be doing than worrying about things that either haven't happened yet or already happened and it's done. Yep.
Agree completely. That's a struggle that I have too, and it comes from dwelling. I was writing a paper in college, and you made this statement. You said, "Don't dwell in the past, because it'll only hold you back from your future."
Man, I'm wise. I should be confused.
Yeah, I wrote that. I was like, dude, I need something. I was writing about a life experience in college for one of my classes, and I was like, I need something to tie this together, and you gave me that line.
Was I drunk at the time? Because that's usually when I came up with my best ideas in college.
We were in IP sitting at the square table.
All right, so probably not.
Yeah, but that was that, and I've lived remembering that ever since then. See, I even remember when you told me that. But to me, I was like, that's exactly how you tie that together. That was perfect, and it's so true. I get held up on things that shoulda, woulda, coulda instead of doing. There's a point where I think that it's positive and say that, okay, you have to look at it from a macro scale as opposed to the micro scale and say, I said this word instead of saying that word. When you can look from it from a sense of saying, if say you're holding a conversation with someone and you use a word you rather would have used something else to better express it. You could say that I should have been more attentive with them in order to express the right words. So it's being more present with people in order to get my point across. So it's what's the overall lesson behind behind the thing that you're really harboring on. Yeah. And then take that macro lesson as opposed to focusing on the micro, the micro of that problem or not resentment, just dwelling, and then make it better do a better job doing it in the future.
Right. It all goes back to learning from your mistakes. Like, you don't sit there and think about it for 3 hours. You sit there, think about it, say, all right, here's my mistake. Here's where I went wrong. It's over with, but I won't make that same mistake again.
Yeah. There's also Gary Vee says that, like, in order to be successful, you have to make decisions fast. And the problem that I have is that decision making is one of those things that I try and think as many possible outcomes for every situation before I decide. Yep. So instead of just making this decision and then dealing with the outcome, maybe I'm in a point in time where I have a lot of time to make decisions. Once you start owning a business, I don't think you'll have as much time to make a decision. So it becomes very important to make a decision, a quick decision as opposed to taking the time to think about it. At the same sense, I utilize my ability to think things so thoroughly through that I use it in a business sense to say, like, how would this, play out in the future? How would be, like, thinking of the structure for BeMor was one of those things that I think that I've had to sit down and really think about all the possible outcomes of the direction for BeMor and then figuring out where I want it to lead. So it's a useful tool, but it shouldn't be something that it's a matter of finding the balance. So you can
have to
overuse
use it in the
in
right
personal
scenarios.
life. Yeah, exactly. I think it can be abused in a personal life that is actually makes you dwell on things. And in a business sense, if it's a decision that just needs to be made and it's something that can be fixed, I think the decision should be made. If it's something that is shaping the foundation, it can be utilized as a tool to help make the right choice or the right decision.
Right. And I would say that we have a good balance in decision making where if we can be self-aware enough to realize our strengths and our weaknesses, because I'm very good at making a quick decision. My problem is it might not be the right decision. You know what I mean? Like, I will make a decision right away. Like, I will, if you ask me something, I'll make a decision. Like, I'm not going to think about it for a week. Half the time I probably should. I probably should take the time to think about it because then suddenly I'm regretting, I made the wrong decision because I made the decision too fast. So, working together and finding that balance where, if I'm like, all right, let's make this decision, you go, well, let's think about it a little bit. Because that's what we did for BeMor. At first we were like, all right, let's just set all this stuff up and let's get going. And that was probably more on my end. And then, we talked about it and took a step back and said, all right, let's think about it for, a week or two and really kind of nail down, what we actually want this to be and really think it through.
Yeah. Yeah, we definitely did do that.
Yeah. And that was, we're kind of learning, right? Because that's kind of what we did with Thoughtfull Foods too. We said, all right, let's sell all this food. This is going to be a great mix. People are going to love it.
Right.
Let's start selling it. And then we realized that, all right, well, that was kind of we didn't really think of all the possibilities, or we didn't really, fully take into account all the possibilities. And then that's kind of where last week we came to that realization, like, hey, we should probably rethink this and, not make them go with the promise.
And it goes back to having the beginner's mentality, is that we needed to think about that from a standpoint. Like, it's good we came into the situation we did because we had to think about it from a situation where we had no resources. And now that we're finally considering it in that sense of no resources, now what do you do? So now we're really thinking about it from the start, in the beginning. And getting to that point of discussing it allowed us to realize that, man, we haven't been pursuing this in the way that we should be.
Right. And this is kind of the early fail often kind of thing that we were talking about, that we talked about in school, because this is the perfect time to fail, right? Like, I am perfectly happy if we keep messing up things right now because we don't have customers, we don't have followers, we don't have any of that.
Yeah.
So like, this is perfect. Like, I'd rather, fail, recognize that we're starting to fail or failing, and then we can, readjust and reassess from there.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a few more notes that are left, and I'm just going to give the notes and then see where we can take it. I'll see where I can tie them together.
Perfect.
So we're just kind of jumping here, but it's all right.
That's fine.
Desire, this is the one that he said. Desire is a contract you make with yourself to be unhappy until you get what you want. What is the underlying desire that is not allowing you to be fulfilled is truly the question you should be asking. So desire is a contract you make with yourself to be unhappy until you get what you want. And that's true in the sense that a desire is an underlying thing that directs your behavior, and understanding the why behind that can sometimes allow you to correct that behavior if it's a bad thing. But I think that same thing, going back to what it said, is shaping my life. The ultimate desire was the ability to help people, and I've shaped my life in a way that hopefully we'll be able to obtain the ability to do that. And I've always wanted to do that from a stance of owning a business. So helping my employees, helping the people who are even purchasing my products, I feel that I'm helping them through them purchasing my product. So that's why I've always wanted to create products that I thought are progressing society as opposed to having a regression sense.
Yeah, and I think that kind of quote really ties in with, again, going back to us reassessing Thoughtful Foods, right? I think that we might have let our desire for, money or for, just pushing this product, we let that overshadow the ultimate desire of helping people.
Right, and that ties in this question is, what is the underlying desire that is not allowing you to be fulfilled? And I think that in taking that from what you just stated is that we are looking at it from a sense of selling product in order to make money. And now we're looking at it from a sense of what was the underlying desire was in that thought, it was the money. In the thought that truly is what we want to be the principle of guiding the company is helping people. And now we're taking that from a stance where we're building the community, helping the people, and really getting a jump start on building the infrastructure to help first before we're asking.
Right. And I still see, don't get me wrong, it's not like the product was just all about the money. I still see that as it was to help people. And that's kind of why you did it.
Most definitely. That's why
for the dietary considerations.
Yeah, dietary considerations. I got into it. The reason why I developed the product was to help myself. So in helping myself, I knew I could help other people because other people out there have the same, trying to eat paleo or gluten-free, vegan, whatever it might be, distilling a product that tastes good and can still. So you're creating happiness in people with a product that fits all their needs. So that is the ultimate, what's the ultimate goal of the product is that. What's the ultimate goal of the company is to help people. So it's in helping people, you're providing a product that helps them. So it's the ultimate goal is to help people. So I was aligned with the goal of the product for sure, but I wasn't aligned with the goal of the company.
Yeah, and I think that it also is kind of, and I've heard Gary Vee mention it a couple times lately, that we're also taking it based historically, right? Like that's how a lot of companies historically have, gotten to where they are today is they had this great product and they sold it, especially in the food and drink industry, that kind of thing. And just because it happened historically doesn't mean that's what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah.
So I think really taking that into consideration. Now, historically, companies that have been customer centered and focused like that has almost always worked. So, we can take it both sides of the argument, but, just as running a business, basically, focusing on the product and not the customer is always going to be wrong. So it's never going to work.
Right. All right, I'm going to jump to the next one. And this kind of is going along with, this kind of goes to I also feel that the way of progressing society is going towards a more entrepreneurial world. And they talked a lot about that also. And one of the things he says is you can't become rich by renting out your time. You have to own equity. And it's something that I've realized that in order to position my life to be able to help people and to obtain money to help people is I have to get to a position where I own equity in something. And the best chance of owning equity in something is by starting a business if you are in a position of no resources. Starting a business with that requires, has a low entry, low capital entry, and has something that I was interested in as well. And that kind of comes down to also the point of valuing your time is that if you want to own equity or build equity in something, you have to know what your hourly rate is or value your time that it's worth X amount of dollars. And they talked about this, that he said he used to value his time at like $500 an hour, which to me hearing that is like pretty crazy. I'm just trying to get like $25 an hour right now. It's like, like that's what I'm trying to value my time at.
Well, did you hear what he said? He said he started at 500 and then he went to 5,000.
5,000, yeah. And it's so true that there's the thing that this is something that some people recently have told me that I've been telling Gary Vee about. They're like, he seems kind of douchey. And I'm like, okay, I can see that. The things that I can see why he sounds that way is because he has such high confidence and conviction in the ideas that he's talking about. But at the same sense, I know that he's not because of how much value he's giving out to people. And a lot of that is that what is his time, say his hourly rate might be able to, for a talk, he might be at for an hour, he might be able to get $200,000 or something. Like ridiculous. And so say he values his time at $200,000 an hour. So if that were the case, why would he take a 15-minute meeting, a 30-minute meeting with someone who asked him on the street to get a meeting with him?
Yep.
So I think that in valuing your time, you also have to know the roots of where you came from. And don't value your time to a point where you forget where you came from. And I forget who said this too, but they said that they keep something in their car as a constant reminder of like where they came from. And I completely forget. It was a journalist that Joe Rogan interviewed. I forget what he said. But that made me think, and it sparked my interest to say that, like, there's been a couple times where I went to a friend's house and then their dad was out working, and I always keep work boots in my car, and I threw in my work boots and just started helping them out. And
right.
So I was like, that made me think, I was like, you know what, maybe I should keep work boots in my car for the rest of my life as a reminder, as to remember where you came from, is just putting in the work, putting in the effort, and, I've also been in building this house. Trying to buy doors and windows. You call a salesman and then they never return your phone calls because you're just trying to buy like 3 doors and 6 windows, as opposed to like someone who's buying, doing like 6 jobs and trying to buy, like 7,500 windows from you. Right. So it doesn't feel good being in this position. So I don't ever want to be in a position where I make someone else feel like I have in the past.
Yeah.
So it's like, sorry, I'll just recap what I just said. It's like, don't value your time to a point where you forget about your customer, your consumer, the person who values your time or values your opinion. Right. You're never worth more than a human life. Your hourly rate is never worth more than a human life.
Right. And something that kind of related that I wanted to bring up, I've been thinking about for a while, is and kind of when you were talking about how people are saying, Gary Vee's kind of douchey or whatever, and it's just, all the negative things people say about him. But I think about how because I listen to his podcast, really, that's where I mostly consume his content, and I think I kind of realized it lately that he doesn't have ads. You know?
Yeah.
Like, every single podcast that I listen to, they have an ad for something, you know? Because they're making money off of it and things like that. But if you look at him, he's not making money off that podcast. Not directly. He's making it, you know, in other avenues because of that podcast, but he's not putting that up there just to make a little bit, you know, a little extra money on the side. And so that kind of, he's like the only one. He's like the only one I've listened to that does it, besides like, you know, people like us who just started a podcast. And it's not really, you know, anything that anyone wants to advertise on. Yeah,
no, it's true. And we've had that discussion before too. And we've talked about how we want this podcast. You know, we talked about if we should do ads or whatever. And we talked about how we wanted this podcast just to be something that it's a give. And it goes back to the jab concept of this is the platform to give, and it's not the platform to ask. And that in trying to share our business ideas about our companies is it's giving the platform to advertise in a sense that's providing value without asking. So by telling people how we're pursuing thoughtful foods, is it bringing publicity to thoughtful foods? Absolutely. But we're not doing it in the sense of buy our product. We're doing it in the sense of this is a problem we encountered with thoughtful foods. Maybe this is something that would help you in your business. You know, take it or leave it kind of a sense. Right. So it's trying to add value directly to the person who was attracted to your content, and as opposed to trying to add value to a consumer by selling a product.
Right. And that's kind of where I thought that was the only negative thing about the Joe Rogan podcast, was that, because I think I listened to it a long time ago, you know, way back, you know, a couple of years ago, but when I turned that episode on, and then I sat there for 4 minutes listening to him say his 3 sponsors, I was like, you know, like it probably doesn't need all this, you know, like, especially knowing him, you know, it's one thing if, let's say I'm a podcaster and that's all I do. All right, well, that's going to be my primary source of income. So yeah, it makes sense to kind of throw an ad or two on there, because that's my living. But you know, for someone like him or like Gary Vee, like they don't need ads. Like they don't really need to monetize their podcast. You know, they're doing 16 other things that, and I think Naval said that too. He was like, if he said to Joe, like, if you lost all your money today, you would be fine tomorrow, because that's like your mindset, and you have built up this brand of yourself. That it doesn't matter what happens to all your money, you can just build it back up again tomorrow.
Yeah, he talked about the brand of like Oprah and the brand of Kanye and a couple other people, and he talks about it in his tweets that we'll talk about too. If Oprah lost all her money, which would be so much money, if she was in a financial problem, she could go in a commercial tomorrow and for millions of dollars on the contract.
Right.
Like no problem, just because it is a personal brand that she's built. Same thing with Joe Rogan.
So that's what I would say the only negative thing. Like I love the content. The content of it was amazing, but that was like the only negative thing. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, all right, he finished his ad for this product. Now I can start listening to the content. And then he would pick up with another one. And I'm like, all right, you know, like
I skip through all this ads.
Yeah.
If I hear something that, sometimes if I'm like, I have the time, I'll skip through them and listen to what the ad is. Because there's a couple things that I'm like, yeah, I would actually like to use that product. So like, it's one of those things that if it's useful to you, listen to it.
Right.
And he's even said that in his episodes. He's like, I do the advertisements not for things that I don't. He said, I use them as for things that I know that someone could utilize. Oh, sorry. He said, the ads that I give, he said, there's things that I use that I enjoy. And he's like, I'm just sharing them because I know it's a good product. And it could potentially provide value for you because it provides value for me. So I think he does it in a good manner. Is it all about money? Yeah, it's still all about money. But he tries to pursue it in a manner that is still, thoughtful of his consumer before it is thoughtful of his pocket.
Oh, for sure. If I'm advertising for anything like that, if it's a third party system or, anything.
Right.
I'm not advertising unless I back it. Like, if I don't use that
exactly.
thing myself and can vouch for it, I'm not going to advertise for it.
Yeah,
So
I still have problems with ads too, and I'm trying to figure out why I don't like it. Maybe it's just because I consume raw, so we'll see what happens when we're in a position where we can be confronted by that.
Right. Yeah, it'll definitely, and I think that this is good that we have this, right? Because we can, we kind of said early on, we don't really want ads on our podcast, right? So if, say, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, whatever, someone comes up and says, hey, we want to advertise on your podcast. And if we're, trying to make a decision, we could go back and listen to episode 2 of our own podcast and basically listen to ourselves give us advice.
Yeah,
it's
one of those things.
Now we know.
Yeah, it's one of the things that it holds you accountable by making it public. Like it's holding you accountable by.
Right. Oh, I am all about the transparency thing. Like that is just, I think that is key to running a successful business, to being, successful in life, is transparency. And that's something I'm trying to instill in a lot of things. So like at work, I made I just developed a ticketing system for myself. So when people need something for the website, they can submit a ticket and, then it goes in the queue and then I can respond to the tickets and solve the problems and things like that.
Right.
So I made that and I made it public facing. So anyone can go in there and obviously I don't have the name of the person or anything like that public facing, but anyone can go in there and say, okay, Morgan has 35 tickets that are open right now and he's closed, 60. It's that kind of transparency where they can see that. Like it's not, and it was funny because I brought it to my boss and she's like, do you want people to see this? And I'm like, yeah. Like people can see it. It's good for both ways. Like people can see it and say, oh, all right, well, I was kind of mad because he hadn't responded to me, but I see that he has, 20 other things before me that are open. And then on the flip side, it keeps me accountable where someone can go in and say, hey, I see that you've had these 20 tickets open for the past 2 weeks. Why haven't you done anything? And you're like, what? Good point. I should really be, I should go in there and do something.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's kind of humorous that you do, but I'm not surprised. Yeah, I like it. And that transparency thing, it's what holds you accountable and it helps guide your actions. And I think that's the importance of people creating values for their lives. We can talk about this later. I don't know if one of the recordings that I have is on values or not, but I gave one on it. I don't know if I recorded. But on values, my values, they used to be wisdom, integrity, and liberty. And as of the past couple of years, I added hospitality. And those 4 things help guide my decision-making process for my personal life. And then I think that when we have, we start aligning this business with employees, we have to structure that business to be guided off of those values also. So it's making accountability. Those values are holding me accountable. By making that ticketing system, it's holding you accountable to decisions that you make and how you direct your actions throughout your career as, for the school and as for my life and for my personal life. It's a value that makes you accountable for, just that pursuit of whatever it is you're fulfilling.
Right. And I think transparency is key to anything. And this is because I've had a few jobs. And so that was my personal boss that said that to me. Like, do you want to have this? Are you sure you want this public facing? But, the boss of our whole department is very all about transparency, and my boss wasn't saying, ooh, you probably shouldn't do this. She was like, just want you to consider that. And I was like, yeah, I understand. So I've had quite a few bosses that actually, I want to say all 3 of the jobs that I've had, since I graduated college. I think all 3 of my bosses have had, at least at some point, said something about focusing on transparency. I think it's important to be transparent. We can't keep things from, customers or constituents. That just causes causes bad things, especially at my current job because, it's a college. So I'm working in communications and marketing. So the vice president of communications and marketing, who's the head of my department, or head of the whole thing, he's like, all right, there's a scandal that's coming out. Here's how other colleges have handled it. Here's how it's backfired because they've kept it a secret.
Right.
And I'm going to go and talk to the newspaper today and give a statement and say, here's what's coming out, so that, it's about getting ahead of it. I don't want someone else to tell our narrative, is what my boss says. He's like, we're going to tell our own narrative, even if it's good, even if it's bad, even if it's good.
Yeah, I work in a fish market. Everyone wants to know where it's from. If you start telling people the wrong thing, it's going to come to backfire. Like you have to be held accountable as a customer for saying where that fish came from, whether it was frozen or fresh, and that's one of those things. And a lot of that, like some people ask for fresh shrimp, and the fishing season for shrimp isn't during the summer, if I'm not mistaken. Like it's during the winter down in Florida and everything. So it's when they're fishing it out of the Gulf of Mexico, it's not during our busy time. So a couple things there. Most shrimp that come in, they're not as fresh as people think. And then they're all coming frozen because they're being shipped across the country. Right. So it's or at least up the country. So education becomes the key importance of that saying, instead, it's going to give them a bad taste if you're like, no, the shrimp are frozen. But if you tell them, no, the shrimp are frozen because they're A, out of season, and B, shipped from the Gulf. They come from the Gulf of Mexico, so you're getting white shrimp from the Gulf of Mexico, high quality product. However, they do come in frozen, but to preserve the freshness, that's the education that's presenting with them the ability to better understand the reason behind why the product came in frozen.
Yeah,
it's the same thing with.
Because I worked at a seafood place in the summers between, while I was home from college, and down here in South Carolina, and there was, obviously I'm not super knowledgeable about fish, but, tilapia or whatever, people would say, hey, is that local? Is that local tilapia? And it's like, no, tilapia doesn't come from here. Like, there's ever, something like that. And it's like, so no, it's not local. And I'm not going to tell you that it is because it would be a lie. And especially because there's a lot of people that come into seafood restaurants that are knowledgeable. And that guy might have just been testing my knowledge,
Right. Yeah.
He might have said, hey, is that tilapia local? Yeah, it's local. Well, I know for a fact that tilapia doesn't come down here. And then I look like an idiot,
Yeah, people come in asking for, female lobsters all the time because some people enjoy eating the roe. Some people just read it online that a female lobster tastes better when they don't even have a dang clue what it is or why it would be or anything. So it's like, I could give them a male lobster and people don't even have a damn clue, but you're providing the education for the customer. And I think the whole transparency thing helps better educate the customer, and it builds, not only does it build that trust, but then you're educating too. And it builds the relation, so that the transparency builds the trust, and then the education builds the relationship, is what I really think that's where it kind of really ties you two together, is you're sharing the knowledge.
Yeah, well, and it's building the relationship because you're providing value. So it all goes back to that providing value.
Yeah. Yep. All ties in.
Definitely.
All right. The only other things I got left, I got this left. Pascal said this quote: all of man's problems arise because he cannot sit by himself in a room for 30 minutes alone. And I remember when I was a kid, I lost two of my best friends in 1 year. My brother left for college, and my best friend, who was a grade below him, graduated early from high school to get out and go to college early. So I lost both of them at the same time. So that year following, I was always sitting in the kitchen just being like, Mom, I'm bored. And it taught me how to kind of internalize things and gain that silence in a point to really think things through. And boredom gives I think, you a chance to explore internally. And
Yes.
Nowadays, it's definitely one of those things where you don't ever have to be bored.
Right. And that's the problem. And yeah, like you said, boredom, because you don't have those external stimulants, you know, like we do now. Like I remember being bored as a kid because I didn't have anything to do, you know, and I couldn't, whatever, I couldn't go watch TV or whatever the case was. I'm just sitting there, and then that's where kind of the imagination comes in. That's where you kind of start thinking about things and how to solve that problem. That you're creating problem solving, tactics and things like that, and that's how you're developing. But with all this kind of external, stimulant, we always have something to do, so we never take that opportunity to stop, internalize, and really you can come up with some of the best stuff by doing that.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in like routines, and I didn't think about this until this topic came up. And because routines set up a system to flow fluidly, but it also creates a sense of absent-mindedness. So I don't know if, I think that routines are powerful, but it also creates a point where you're just, I don't know, you're not present. So it's...
Right. You're going through the motions.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think that I just never thought about a routine in that fashion, and I think that there's routines that you can set up in a sense that they help you avoid certain things. So you set up a routine to avoid something. So like I could set up a routine that, like, say when I get home from work, I don't want to be bothered. Say I go home from work from my wife, I don't want to be bothered, so we set up a routine that we both go our separate ways. And that's drawing it apart. So it's like, first it should be like, give me attention. Hey, how you doing? How was your day? Blah, blah, blah. And then go your separate ways. So it's, instead of setting up a routine for you're setting it up for avoidance as opposed to setting up a routine for, success, or like to tackle what needs to be done.
Yeah, I think that routines have their place. Like there's good utilizations of routines. Like especially in business, like if there's small, tasks that are just kind of boring and they have to be repetitive and things like that. Yes, set up a routine to improve that and, automate it or whatever, but I don't think that routine should be on larger tasks, like big tasks. I think even if it is repetitive, I think it's important to not necessarily have a routine specifically, laid out, because you could think of, if I'm doing my routine, let's say I'm like closing the books or something at the end of the month, and I'm going through that routine every month, same thing. I just run through the routine. I'm not really developing anything. But if I have, no set routine, I just know that I have a deadline, I might think of new creative ways to improve that process. What I mean? Like in a routine, you become stuck and you might not think outside of the box.
Yeah, then we can just keep jumping around here. Going back to what we were talking about being optimistic mindset instead of versus pessimistic mindset is in order to get there, you have to watch your thoughts and don't judge them, just let them happen and unbiasedly ask, why am I thinking this? And I think that's something that'll help you get to a point of realizing, why am I thinking this? Why am I viewing this in a pessimistic way? And then you can get to a point where you can shifting the mindset towards an optimistic way. Now, being an optimist doesn't come simply by thought. I saw it as something that I had to forcibly do, and I forcibly still do it, I think. I don't think it's something that comes naturally to me. I'll always think pessimistically, and then I'm like, okay, it's more of like not think optimistically. It's more of a think of it from the other sense is how I think about it. I always think about what's the opposite way. I think about the opposite way. It's like, okay, the opposite way is this, and that's how it comes about.
Right. Yeah, and I completely agree with that. it's all about optimism, right? And it's not an easy thing to develop. If it was an easy thing to develop, everyone would be an optimist, you know? Like it's I feel like as kids we are born as optimists because kids are just naturally optimistic. They'll always see the best in things. And then I think as we grow and as we, you know, have different experiences, I think a lot of people become pessimists. And that's kind of, you got to kind of break the mold of what society has built you to and go back to that kind of almost like childlike optimism.
Yeah, they use this term in deck, and I've heard this a lot, is getting a childish mindset, just getting in that childish, like thinking of things unbiasedly, asking why a lot, thinking of it without judgment. Kids don't judge anything. They take things as they are, and that's just how life goes to them because they're just receiving.
Right.
And I just want to highlight to end this portion is that on Twitter he had a wealth creation principles, and I think it was, I forget what the title of it was, but I gave you a link to it. We'll just put it in the show notes. And it really goes over all the points. It covers like this whole conversation in like however many tweets it is, and in a very concise manner. And
I love his little kind of how, and I didn't really go and look at it until you sent that to me, but he kind of described it in the podcast where he has this kind of little short clips or short tweet type thing where he spends only like 3 or 4 minutes on a topic because that's all he really cares to put out about it, and he doesn't. That's all the thoughts he has on it, you know.
Yeah, the Naval podcast, you can catch it on YouTube or on I got it on iTunes. I downloaded it today. He goes into more detail of explaining each individual tweet, and it's like 2 hours and 50 minutes, which isn't bad on a podcast at all, especially since we're on an hour and a half here. So it's like he breaks everything down on the podcast too. So I'm curious to look into that.
Definitely.
All right, let's take this in the direction of business wise. Then as of last week, we were trying to start the first steps of the community, and you've set up the web page for recipes. And I saw you sent the test. You sent the test page today. I got it on the email. I don't know why. Either you sent it to me or just did it automatically for. Oh,
you
I
might have
saw
done it automatically.
Yeah, you left.
Oh, that's what it was. That's right. I was testing comments on the to make sure the comments feature worked. So because I sent you as the author, it sent it to you. Right.
Cool. Yeah. So I saw the test page, and it automatically links to Pinterest.
Yeah. So I actually was working on it this morning before. I basically got a kind of recipe blog type centric theme that I set up and I modified a little bit for our website for Thoughtfull Foods. And basically it basically has everything set up so that you can just start posting recipes. Obviously I can go through it with you for the first couple because there's some subtleties to it. Just to make sure that it gets posted correctly and it comes up in search correctly and things like that. But yeah, I kind of, it's designed pretty nice. It's a minimalistic, simple design, just to start displaying recipes. And it has the functionality later, you know, down the road when we choose to put in a shop feature and sell things or whatever. But yeah, so if I don't know if you probably don't have a computer in front of you because you're at the house, but when you get a chance, go jump on a computer and check it out on a desktop. So it looks pretty nice.
Yeah, I clicked on the link. It looked nice there. I haven't seen it on desktop yet because I know you haven't done the mobile platform.
I mean, I've done it. It's kind of already generated towards mobile, but I still need to make some tweaks and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'll look at it on the desktop later. But yeah, so I guess it's almost time I start posting some recipes.
Yeah. So like I said, whenever you're ready, just let me know and we can run through one together.
You're passing the torch here. I'm feeling
That's
the pressure already.
Yeah, I told you last week. I said I'm going to set this up so we can start doing it. You can put your 2 hours in a week or whatever.
I want to make this comment, so I don't want to get off topic, but I want to make the comment that this is what I've tried to start many businesses as an individual, and it never worked out. And this is just want to express the importance for, if, like, say you're a procrastinator or someone who or loses interest in things quickly and jumps ideas, the importance of maybe adding someone to your team that you know has your weaknesses. This is definitely an area where it's been, you on the social media, the web development, everything, you bring all of that strength to the team that I don't have. However, you're also bringing just the accountability portion. You've done your share. Now it passes to me. Now it's my responsibility. Then after that, I create the recipe. I'll give it back to you, and then for it to be posted or whatever, and then push to social platforms and everything. So it's a back and forth. It's the whole I'm giving, and then you're giving back. I'm giving, then you're giving back. So it constantly pushes us in a progression that is furthering it. And to me, that was something that I needed, because holding someone this accountability is definitely something that'll push this faster. And rather than it would have if I just have been doing it myself.
Right. And especially because I know you well enough that I can say this next phrase and I know it'll, kind of kickstart you. But, I know you don't like inconveniencing people. So if you don't post next week, you're going to be inconveniencing me.
Right.
I know that's always been something that you said, that you don't like inconveniencing people.
Yeah, I don't. And that's, to an extent, that's had to been something that I've had to overgrow, because not outgrow it completely, because still I don't like inconvenience. I'd rather do everything that I could for a person to make it as seamlessly and easy as for them as possible. And right. There's a lot of strength to it. There's a lot of weakness in the sense that in doing that, it creates me to not want to ask for help ever. And right. There comes a time where you have to, or you should. Like it condenses your time frame. If you ask a mentor for advice, whatever it might be, instead of, if this has been said to me too, like if you ask someone a question, it becomes their decision of whether they want to give you their time or not. So just ask the question, because it's not on you, it's on them.
Yeah, and what have you lost if they say no?
Right, right.
You're back to where you started anyway.
Right, yeah.
Where you would have been if you hadn't asked the question.
Right. All right. I wanted to go off on this tangent just because I didn't want to lose the train of thought, but now I've lost the train of thought of where this started. What were we talking about previously?
Yeah, we were just talking about Thoughtfull Foods, the website. So, I mean, we kind of talked about that. It just has some good features on there. I basically have stuff where you can tag it by dietary consideration. So you could say, this recipe is paleo, vegan, whatever. I just added kind of the 6 or so ones that I just know of off the top of my head, but we can obviously add more. So that'll just kind of help people sort through. So, and I made it pretty prominent on the front page, especially on desktop, because of how it aligns. But people would be able to go there and be like, so if I have a, gluten intolerance or celiac or whatever, I can go on there and say, oh, this is a gluten-free recipe. Let me click gluten-free, and I'll see all the gluten-free recipes on this website. So just things like that can be helpful. And yeah, and like I said, I set up the infrastructure so we can kind of take this to whatever steps we want to in the future. But I like that we're focusing on providing the value in the recipes to people.
Yeah. Yeah, so start posting some recipes.
Yes. Thoughtfulfoods.com. I'll just say it so that we have it on record and people can go there.
Yeah.
And that's thoughtful with 2 L's.
Thoughtful with 2 L's, yeah.
I'm going to have to get used to saying that.
Yeah.
And then I did do some stuff with the BeMor Media website. It's just a basic one right now, so I don't think it needs to be anything more than that, 'cause it's really where we're going to post our podcast and all that stuff. But we can obviously develop that further in the future.
Very nice.
I guess something that I wanted to discuss in regards to this, so the kind of collaboration, well, I guess it's not really collaboration, but the dynamic between the two. So like, this is just kind of how I set it up, and obviously we can change it. But for example, in the footer of the Thoughtful Foods website, I have it, copyright 2019, Thoughtful Foods, and then I put a BeMor Media company. I don't know if that's how we want to start advertising things like that. Do we want to make it like known, that kind of thing?
Right. Yeah, I mean, why not? Like, so we're trying to pursue, even with some of our suppliers, we're trying to pursue a cross advertising model. And I think that probably the best way to do that is to do it internally.
Right.
Also.
Okay. So I guess it's just as long as you're good with that kind of terminology, like a BeMor Media company, or do you think, company's the right phrase, or?
What was the first one you said?
No. That's what it is now. It's Thoughtful Foods, a BeMor Media company.
Yeah, I like that.
Okay. That's perfect. Yeah, and then I'll set it up on BeMor Media. Basically, I have it right now. It's like our portfolio kind of thing. So it's, on BeMor Media, there's like a portfolio link, and then it has like projects, which has Thoughtful Foods and stuff. So we can obviously think that structure through if that's how we want to do it.
Okay.
But yeah, just something to think about. And now the ball's in your court, and start posting some recipes on Thoughtful Foods. And I'll obviously post this podcast onto the BeMor Media site, and then across all the other places that it needs to get posted, YouTube and SoundCloud and things like that. And cool. Yeah, it was pretty cool how the whole process of putting up a podcast.
Yeah, maybe explain that process for anyone who's thinking of doing the same. Explain how you said it, because you really tried to mainstream it as most as you possibly could. I think the infrastructure you set up saves a lot of time.
Yeah. And it's kind of how most podcasts are set up.
Okay.
Because of how I think we're both, obviously money-wise is always a factor, but I'm always kind of pretty frugal and trying to figure out ways that I can do things for free. So there are definitely sites like I think Podbeans. There's a couple other ones that they can host your podcast, and it's kind of more automated than what I did, where they kind of, you put all the information in and then they send it out to all the places and they host your files and things like that.
Right.
For me, I'm obviously very involved and very into WordPress. That's kind of what I use for most things. So I found a solution where I can use a plugin. And actually, I should pull it up just so that I can name it. I actually gave it a review because it was awesome. Pretty quick to set up. Let me pull it up here. So the plugin, the WordPress plugin, was called Seriously Simple Podcasting. So it's kind of, as the name implies, you can install this plugin. All you have to do is fill out all the right fields. And then basically how podcasts work is there's a feed that all of these are pulling from. So it'll tell you what your feed link is, and then you can submit that to iTunes and Spotify and, all these kind of venues that you can have your podcast. You basically submit your feed. So this week when I upload episode 2, now that we've been approved on everything, I'll upload it, and then because I upload it on our site, it'll automatically, after I fill in all the information, because it's in the feed now, it'll automatically get updated across all these different platforms. So, it takes a little bit for iTunes to come back and reread the feed, just a couple hours. But then, once I upload it, basically you just wait for the services to rescan your feed, and the episode will just kind of show up all by itself. So it's automated, which is nice. Super easy. For
Which
YouTube
ones
and
are
SoundCloud.
automated?
So
Okay, YouTube and SoundCloud aren't.
YouTube and SoundCloud I do by myself. Obviously, because you're
Right.
submitting an audio file, you can't just submit an audio file to YouTube because it's a video
Gotcha.
platform. So as of right now, we don't have any video content to go with it, until we get to the point where we're sitting in a room together or whatever, recording us talking or whatever. We don't have video content. So I just kind of threw up our BeMor Media logo. And so that's all that displays the whole time. But, people can go there and throw it on YouTube if that's their preferred platform. And SoundCloud isn't automated either, but I think it's kind of an important platform because that's a big audio platform.
Yeah.
But kind of everything else. And there's a lot of kind of podcasting places. There's also quite a few that are podcast providers that they actually build their library based on the iTunes library. So iTunes is probably the key place that you want to, make sure you get on, because then all these, there's some other providers that aren't major ones that will just pull it from iTunes.
Right. Yeah, iTunes is, it's what I use. There's a lot, most of the ones that you said I've never even heard of, so it's like, I'm sure it's probably the most widely used podcast.
Yeah, I tried to pull the main ones and put it on there. But yeah, like I said, iTunes, and, I was kind of texting you throughout the week, hey, we got approved on this one. Hey, we got approved on that one. And the last one we got approved on was iTunes because it's so hard to kind of get it up there. Their process is a little more strict. But it's definitely, so seriously simple podcasting is what I use. Free. It's all free. They do have right now I'm hosting it, in a free environment, hosting the podcast, but Seriously Simple Podcasting does have a, service that you can host through them. That's a paid service. So if you want to kind of integrate it all in one, that's where you can do that.
So when you post onto our website, it's distributed, correct?
Yep. So, I'll edit this however we want it. And then when I post the audio file up and make a new podcast post, it'll just get distributed automatically. Right. Besides YouTube and SoundCloud that I mentioned.
Right. Most of all of our conversations have been unedited. Our first conversation, we hit record early, so we just chopped off a few minutes on the front end, but everything
it's
else.
basically us, razzing each other and, giving each other a hard time. But.
Yeah, I kind of want everything to be just unedited and just see it in the raw.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Well, I think last time I messed with the audio quality a little bit, just to try to improve it. Okay. Neither of us have any podcasting software.
Yeah, I threw on some of those headphones this time around. We'll see if they're any better.
Perfect.
The iPhone.
So. Perfect. Yeah, so I didn't really, like you said, all I did was cut off a little bit at the front of the last one, so it made more logical sense. And then threw some filters on to try and make the audio better. But yeah, this is all unedited. And it's all unedited, all uncut. This is us.
Where did you put it on the? How'd you find the filters? What'd you use the filters on? What platform were you using?
So I used Premiere, and I can actually pull the product. The project up right now. Adobe Premiere is what I use. I'm sure there's podcasting people that probably use better software, and there's a Adobe product that's all audio, so that might have been better. I just don't know how to use it. That's Adobe Audition. I know a lot of people use GarageBand, or they might use what's the other one? I'm not sure. There's a bunch. There's a bunch of different places to use it. I mainly threw it in Premiere because I was using it to make the video for YouTube. So I kind of messed with the audio, and then I messed with the video, and so then I exported just the audio, and then I exported the audio and the video. So the audio went to our website, and then the video went to YouTube. as for kind of the effects that I use, there's really just a basic kind of balancing effect that just took out a little bit of noise from the audio. I'll have to look up what it is, so I'll include it in the show notes, and kind of that quick process of how I improve the audio a little bit.
All right. Yeah, now that I'm paying attention, there's a lot of birds chirping in the background.
That's fine. Right. I actually didn't hear that until just now, so okay. Maybe that should be our ending music for the podcast. We'll just have some birds chirping.
There you go. The closing tunes.
Perfect. So yeah, that's all I have for this week. We covered a lot with, the podcast, the Joe Rogan podcast, with Naval, Ravikant. And we didn't really talk about his kind of background, but he's the CEO and co-founder of AngelList, which is it's a platform for startups. I don't know if you know much about it, but it's a platform for startups that they can, mainly for hiring people for startups, and they can either provide equity in the company as a compensation or salary as compensation and that kind of thing. And I think it's probably grown a little bit beyond that, because that's kind of my take on it from when I was looking at it a year or two ago. But that's kind of the main concept behind that. So it's a really cool platform.
Start. That's all I got to.
Perfect. Until next week or whenever we do it next.
Yeah, whenever. Thanks for all the putting together the website and everything, and really making this podcast, or just us documenting the process, become a reality.
Yeah, we should set a goal for next, before we come back on next time, whether that is a week from now or whatever, that you have a recipe up there too.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
We'll set that goal. It's an actionable goal that we can move forward on.
So I think I'm gonna have to push the podcast back for maybe like 2 weeks, or give you more time.
Yeah, we'll push it back. Yeah, we were gonna have another podcast episode tomorrow, but now that I said that, we're just gonna push back a month, right?
Yeah. So that's all I got, and we've now got an infrastructure to get started, and for building a community, and I think this is kind of where it begins. Also, we're using just Google Voice as a recording, right?
Yeah. For right now, we're just using Google Voice because we are both not poor, but poor in the sense that we are not investing a lot in podcasting equipment. So I have Google Voice through my freelance company, so I just pulled that up.
Right.
But Google Voice is free, so anyone can get Google Voice and set up a recording like this.
Right. I just wanted to get that out there so people know that it doesn't take much to get started.
Yeah. So we can give Google some credit because they need it from us.
Shit. All right.
All right. We'll talk to you later.
Sounds good. Love you, brother.
Love you too. Bye.
Peace.